Step on up, sit down, twist off that bottle top or crack open that can, and welcome to Porch Matters. This is Terry Cagle coming to you from my back porch. Yes sir, yes ma'am, the name of this show is authentic. On Porch Matters, our saying is this: big issues or just a friendly conversation, no topic is off limits. We take pride in being able to talk about anything with each other in an open discussion. Open discussion is one of the only ways to learn. Your perspective could be changed. You could change the perspective of others. Friends and family, welcome back to another episode of Porch Matters. I'm glad you're here. As I record this opening, I am not on my back porch. I took a little road trip this weekend with my mom, her best friend, and my great aunt. So I am coming to you from Kansas City, Kansas. We came up through Memphis, got across the I-55 bridge right around sunrise to keep from getting caught up in traffic since the I-40 bridge is closed. Came up through Arkansas into Missouri. My first time seeing the Ozarks. They did not disappoint. Would love to come back up and see them in the fall. We drove through Branson and Springfield on up into Kansas City. I should have already had this intro recorded before I left, but to be completely honest, it's been a busy week for me and I procrastinated. Hopefully this podcast finds you having a great weekend. Since Porch Matters is now dropping on Mondays, your Mondays are officially now a whole lot better. Remember to share the show with at least one person and make their day better as well. Just a little side note about this Kansas City trip. I've always been really proud of the Memphis barbecue, and I've always held it in real high esteem. I'll be honest, KC, you got it going on when it comes to barbecue. Just want to throw that out there. On this episode, I welcome stand-up comedian Lee Cross to the porch. We talk a little football, and then Lee shares how he got into stand-up. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you do too. Without further ado, let's get started. Lee Cross, welcome to the porch, my friend. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. Good to be here.
Apparently, I don't know how to read emails. I don't know how to read anything because apparently I sent you the wrong email trying to get you in here.
Well, see, so I tricked people is I took the O out of my last name in my email just to make sure people are paying attention.
Well, I wouldn't because I'm waiting on whoever I sent that email to join the invite.
Hey, man, you know what? If they join us, that's great because I tried to get that email address with my last name, but somebody already had it.
Oh, so somebody already took it from you.
There's another Lee Cross out there using that Gmail account. So if he joins us, I'd like to get to know him.
See, he might be a distant cousin.
Would not shock me. Honestly, would not shock me.
Really?
I actually ran into a guy, same last name. He just recently moved to this town where I live, and his family is from Iowa. And so I was talking to my grandma, and she said that the Crosses kind of split when they came to America, and her family went down south. And as far as she knows, either they stayed in the Northeast or they went out to the Midwest. So we could be second or third cousins. So
if you're listening to this and your last name happens to be Cross, he's looking for his distant cousin. So you need to get in touch with him.
Yeah. Just so I know not to hook up with
We're not swapping right?
Yeah, we're not doing that.
No, we ain't all about that. If you was going to do all of that, you'd be living in Arkansas, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of where you live, I've got a question for you.
I think I know what question it is.
With you being the Texan, the proud Texan that you are, there's several of my listeners, and including me, the host, that may or may not have ever been to Texas. I have been to Texas twice, never left the airport in Houston, whichever one it was, never left it. So technically, I've never stepped foot into Texas other than the airport. Explain to me and my audience
well, for lack of better words, what's the big deal about Texas? What makes Texas so spectacular in the eyes of Texans?
So as a person who has traveled this great country, I've lived in many different states. I've had that question brought to me all the time. And the one thing that is just so great about us is, Texas was a republic before it joined, the Union. So not a lot of places can really say that they were their own country before, becoming, they were territories. Like Oklahoma was a territory, Alaska and Hawaii were territories, but they weren't their own, what you consider their own country. So that kind of gives us a little swagger to our step. And it's just the thing with Texas is if you go to Houston, that's a completely different culture than if you go to Austin or El Paso or Dallas. So you've got all these cultures in this one area, but at the same time, if you go, a friend of mine he went to Israel and they were doing a tour and the tour guide was asking everybody where they were. So they had people from different countries. They had people from all over Europe, South America, a couple of Australians, and there's a couple of people from America. But he didn't say he was from America. He said he was from Texas. And he was everyone just oohed and awed because he was from Texas, and it's just, we think highly of ourselves. We studied, our history in junior high and again in college if you want. It's just, it's a state of mind. It's just, if you ever come down here, we're some of the friendliest people you ever meet, but at the same time, when people talk mess about Texas, I'll just look and be like, oh, I'm sorry. Is somebody with a state that doesn't have their own toast talking mess about Texas?
The only time I talk smack about Texas is when it comes to college football. Roll Tide, my friend. Sorry, couldn't help it. I know you're a big Aggies fan. Couldn't help it.
Man, hey, so you saw Kellen Mond went in the third round of the Minnesota Vikings.
I did.
A lot of my friends in Minnesota are not happy.
Why is that?
Well, so here's the thing. Kellen Mond in itself, he was a great quarterback, but I don't think he's going to be a good, he's definitely not a starter. My thing is, if I was an NFL, general manager and I wanted to get Kellen Mond, I would make sure I had a really good starting quarterback, have him as a backup to learn from that, seasoned professional. But right. I think they're going to try to have him as a starter, in Minnesota. And I just don't see that happening because, like I said, Kellen Mond, he played for an SEC team. He broke all the records at A&M, and good for him. But he's that's the one thing is we haven't had a really good. A lot of people say Johnny Manziel is a good quarterback. Johnny Manziel put up a lot of good numbers, but you can't play that style of quarterback in the NFL. You're going to get your head ripped off.
Exactly.
And Kellen Mond kind of had the same. He was a great runner, but look at even Tim Tebow. He had the size to go up against some of those people, and it's just not smart in the NFL when you got these professional, linebackers who are just, close to 300 pounds, just raw muscle and aggression going at you. It's just, in my opinion, I wish him nothing but the best. But at the same time, I was just like, I don't think he's going to be a great NFL quarterback. I see him playing, a couple of years maybe.
I was in Bryant-Denny Stadium the year that Texas A&M rolled into Tuscaloosa and put up, I think it was either 21 or 24 points on Alabama, in the first quarter. And I almost got into a fight with a couple of drunks talking smack because I was, the game's not over until there's 4 zeros up there in the fourth quarter. That's
what I tell everybody. I was like, dude, I don't give up.
Right.
And actually, playing football growing up, my coach was like, I don't care if it's not until there's 4 zeros. It's not till the whistle's blown.
Exactly.
That's what I hate about movies where you're watching a football movie and it's counting down to 0 and I'm like, no. It's not until the whistle's blown. You can have all zeros across the thing. You can still be running a play. It's not like basketball. That's little things that irk me, but right. I get it. Not a lot of people understand the game of football.
I have never, where I was going with my story, I never in my life seen Bryant-Denny Stadium, what I call the cathedral of college football, but I'm partial.
It's a good stadium, man.
I have never in my life seen that place rocking like it was in the fourth quarter. I love Alabama. I love Alabama fans, but we're too prim and proper. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, granted, you've either got to know somebody, you got to be able to find the right scalper, or you got to be rich to buy season tickets and to have season tickets at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Same thing here at Battlefield.
I've been on the waiting list for season tickets for Bryant-Denny Stadium for about 15 years now. You can't get a hold of them. And once you get them, I mean, you're hanging on to them, no matter if you got to mortgage your house.
Yeah.
You look at videos and everything else of other places where, for example, I think it's Virginia Tech that comes out to Enter Sandman and the whole dead-gum stadium's jumping around like an African
everyone,
tribe.
and in unison. It's the craziest thing.
I'm talking about it and I'm getting goosebumps. And
dude,
I'm not
so
even from there.
Dude, I love seeing stuff like that. I love seeing like colleges have their own thing, like Virginia Tech has theirs, or USC has the guy right out on the Trojan horse and then stabs the 50-yard line with the sword, like stuff like that. Like I like that.
Me too. That's where I was going. Most of the time, Alabama fans just sit there with their pom-pom. I'm telling you, that night, even the upper deck was jumping. I mean, it was wild. We lost that game. We lost it was best game that I have seen in Bryant-Denny as of yet, and I've been going to Bryant-Denny since '99.
See, I love how you and I can have this conversation about football, but if it was me and somebody that went to UT, it'd be very hostile. Very hostile.
Well, with you, I'm sure you can't have a Texas A&M without a UT.
You can't.
Much like here, you can't have an Alabama without having an Auburn, and you can't have an Auburn without having an Alabama.
For sure.
Here, I don't know how it is there with college football, but here, whenever Nick Saban goes to the bathroom, it makes talk radio 365.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever you come into this state, a lot of times people will ask you this question before they ask you your name: Alabama or Auburn?
Yep.
You know, the people talk about how Michigan versus Ohio State is the biggest, baddest rivalry in the nation.
No.
Michigan and Ohio State didn't get shut down by the state government for 40 years.
No.
The Iron Bowl did.
Yeah.
People ask me, what do I think the biggest rivalry in college football is? I'm partial, but I've got that fact to back me up. Unfortunately, we've got a guy that claims to be an Alabama fan sitting in jail from felonies trying to kill Auburn's trees.
I remember watching that on the SEC channel.
People take this rivalry way too seriously.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's just a game, man.
Yeah. I'd like to say that A&M in Texas was like that, but we never had people trying to what all we did was rebranded a Longhorn and then gave University of Texas their mascot name. As far as we went.
Right.
But that's to that guy to go and straight up, that's
and he got, if my memory serves me correctly, he got pissed off because some Auburn fan taped an Auburn jersey to Bear Bryant's statue.
Yeah.
And he went down there and poisoned their trees. I've been to Toomer's Corner. It's beautiful. Why in the world would anybody in a right mind want to go down there and mess that up? I don't understand why they throw toilet paper in the trees, especially in a pandemic. Look how much money they could have saved if they had saved some of those rolls of toilet paper.
Exactly. 100%.
But, I mean, that's their tradition. Have at it.
Yeah. It's like, why do they throw tortillas at Texas Tech? I don't know. It's just what they do.
They throw tortillas at Texas Tech?
I didn't know that. Oh, my gosh. So, you'll see them bringing in, just packages of tortillas, and they just start throwing them, and they go on the field. And first off, Texas Tech fans are the worst fans out there. I mean, with a close tie with, Texas and Baylor. Their fans are just terrible. Like, last time we went to Texas Tech, some people went in and, went number 2 in the buses. Just all over the buses. Like, why were you doing? Like, I understand you're mad we're leaving the Big 12, but come on. That's disgusting.
Have you met any LSU fans?
I have.
There's several out there that I love.
Yeah.
I've met some great ones. My very first Alabama game was 1999, Bryant-Denny Stadium. They were playing LSU. I was walking around Bryant-Denny. I was like a pig in mud, man. Fat kid in the candy store, however you want to call it. I
Oh
was
yeah,
just tickled to be there. I was walking
just
around
the whole
trying.
atmosphere, just your first game. I mean, of course,
Right.
I remember my first time going and watching the game at Kyle Field. Exact
Yeah.
same thing.
I was walking around and I see LSU fans, and I was trying to at least act like I had, some decency about me. I was like, hey, good luck today.
Yeah.
They were pissed off because it was sun shining out there, dude. I swear. What are you talking about? Shut up. What?
Like Sam Elliott and We Were Soldiers.
Something similar, yes.
Yeah. What makes it such a goddamn good morning? Like, dude, calm down.
Right. No disrespect to any of you that are listening to this show that are LSU fans. I'm just talking about this one particular people.
Every school's going to have those people, but
right.
I will say this: the first year that A&M was in the SEC, I was working at a local restaurant here in College Station, and we were all worried because we've had our run-ins with the Big 12, with Texas, Baylor, all of them. We've had more bad instances than we had good instances with them, and so we were like, man, how are these, Ole Miss, and we've never seen these fans before. And the first group of people to come through was Florida, and of course, the mayor, I think it was who was the coach? But he coaches for South Carolina now.
Crap. He used to be the defensive coordinator at UT as well.
Yeah, so he was talking. He's like, College Station, never heard of him, and then of course the mayor of College Station tries to rebuttal, and I'm like, buddy, just let it go. And so we're all like, oh, what kind of drama is this going to cause? But I tell you, these Florida fans came into our restaurant. They were some of the nicest people. And this is both before and after the game. A lot of people get a little bit more rowdier after the game. But after the game, they're just like, we really appreciate it coming down to College Station. You guys are a class act. Just every group of fans that came through. And every now and then, of course, during the game, there's some ribbon and there's some smack talk. But that, everyone was a lot more cordial. The SEC fans, very passionate fans, but they're also very nice fans. I remember talking to a guy, an Alabama fan. We were out at a bar watching the game. A&M beat Alabama, and this guy looked at us and he was like, "That was a good game." He's like, "I'm pissed that we lost, but that was a good game."
Right.
Then he bought us a round of beers.
As much smack as I just talked about LSU, I will go to their defense. Not one time that I know of did one of their fans get arrested for teabagging another drunk fan in New Orleans.
Yep.
So, I mean, that.
And this is in New Orleans.
Yes. One of our fans, as I say, was a complete and total idiot. That's two complete and total idiots, if you're keeping track, folks, that I have said. I love my Alabama Crimson Tide, and I love my fellow Crimson Tide fans, but there are several of them out there that are idiots.
Yeah, every group's gonna have a bad batch. That happens.
So, how do you feel about your school actually being in the SEC now and actually leaving the Big 12? Or is it?
Dude, I'm gonna tell you,
has it been a positive for y'all?
Minus this year because of COVID, that kind of sucked, but it's just watching the steady progression. I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I did not think we were gonna win one game the first year we were in the SEC. And then granted, we had Johnny Manziel as the quarterback that year, which was our saving grace. So, then they hired Jimbo Fisher, and then we're just like, did we just overpay for a coach who had good pedigree, And so, but he, this last year, man. Especially with COVID, and we had quite a few players opt out not to play this year because of COVID. So you take that alongside with, when at first they were saying we weren't going to have anybody in the stadium. So I was like, well, shoot, there goes our home field advantage with the 12th man. And then luckily we had, 25% allowed to go in. And so, but this last year, man, it's, I wasn't talking, I wasn't, saying that we weren't going to do any good. But I was just, I'm more the people. I was sitting there just like, I just want to see what happens. And then, of course, first 2 games are against Clemson, who just, mopped the floor with us. And so I was just like, well, that's not a good thing. But then, throughout the season, we started getting better. We lost to Alabama. But again, it's not like we're losing to cupcake teams either.
Right.
So, and then, towards the end of the season, we were like, well, shoot, man, we might be in the playoffs, which is why I think there should be an 8-team playoff instead of a 4-team playoff. Because you're always going to have Alabama. You're always going to have Clemson. You're always going to have Ohio State. And then it's either, Notre Dame or whoever. I'd like to see more because, first of all, get UCF in there just to shut them up because they're always saying that they're the national champs. I was like, you guys wouldn't hold a candle to the Big 12.
No, they need to join a big boy conference and then see what happens.
So,
I agree.
To see what happens.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on the 8-team playoff, but I'll even go a step further. Okay, I think the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, Pac-12, and say one other, the American. Okay, each conference needs to go to at least 16 teams. Okay, split into 2 divisions. The winner of each division has to have a championship. Okay, and it ought to be the winner of each championship to go into the national title playoff.
Yeah,
I've been consistent with that. There's been a couple of times that Alabama has gotten into the national championship game under Nick Saban that I didn't think they deserved it. I've been wholeheartedly one of those that says if you can't win your conference, you don't deserve to win a national title. That's just my thoughts. That's my opinion. That's the way I think.
That's not a bad thing either.
Right. So I think that if you make your conferences big enough, and also the Big 12, I know with Texas does this at one point in time, that's part of the reason why y'all split. They were getting $22 million a year, and the rest of the teams wouldn't get but like 11.
Yeah, so it's
something
like
along those lines.
They were getting, the 5-course meal, and all of us were just kind of getting scraps. Now granted, because A&M's got we're a big school, we've got really big donors. We weren't hurting too bad. Those teams like, Iowa State, Colorado and all them, they've got good programs, but they didn't have the funding like, Texas and A&M did, or Oklahoma in that fact. Even Oklahoma being the powerhouse it wasn't even getting, a square deal.
Right. I read somewhere whenever the Big 12 actually formed, it was actually supposed to be built around Nebraska. Because if you remember when the Big 12 formed, Nebraska was on a tear.
Yeah. Yeah. Nebraska was like Nebraska back then was what Alabama is now.
Right.
Like, no, you couldn't beat them. And especially if you were playing them at home, you knew you were going to walk away with an L. You just to see how well you were going to, lose that game.
Right. And that's one of the beauties about the SEC. I can't speak for the rest of the conferences because I don't know. But every bit of money that Alabama might have gotten from winning the national championship this year, your school, all the way down to Vanderbilt, got an even cut of it.
Yeah.
I've always loved and appreciated that about the way the SEC's been. I think that's the standard that should be held.
And it's not just football, it's baseball, basketball.
Everything.
It's everything. It's an even playing field, and it's just, how well can you recruit and how well can you coach? Because up until that point, minus what, the boosters are giving you, we've given you the tools and everything. Here you go.
Right. I actually think that y'all have a good coach with Jimbo Fisher.
He's a great coach. Fantastic coach.
I think if if the alumni and everything is patient with him, I think you're going to be a contender.
That's the one thing is the alumni are not. They basically, it's like, we're going to give you 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in 4 years, if you don't deliver, then we're going to, but I mean, $75 million. Ooh.
We lived through it. We lived through it here, brother. I mean, before Saban showed up, we was going, if we went 6-6 and made it to the Music City Bowl, boy, it was a fantastic year. And that's a lot of these kids these days. I'm just going to say it. They're spoiled. Nick Saban has spoiled them. They don't know what it meant to go 6-6 and look forward to going to the Music City Bowl.
Oh yeah.
Shout out to
Well,
anybody from the Music City Bowl that's listening to this. I'm not knocking your bowl, but at the time, it was just a very small, just started.
Yeah.
So, but we were happy to be there.
A&M got Franchione from Alabama after he had, and so we were super excited because we were like, oh man, we're going to get an Alabama coach, and we were lucky if we went 6-6 and went to the Alamo Bowl.
I wanted him to be my head coach so bad. I got tapes down there, but the guy that I'm not going to go into that story, but I'll tell you off air. But anyway, it was right after they had won the SEC championship that year, and a big supporter from around here decided to hand deliver my tapes, and he got so mad at the coaching staff that he never donated another dime to the place until the day he died. And I'll tell you the rest of the story off air. Him picking up and leaving and going to A&M was a big shock here because a lot of people actually thought that he was going to bring us back to the promised land. But if he hadn't left, we wouldn't have got Mike Shula, and then we really wouldn't have been able to appreciate Nick Saban whenever he showed up.
Yeah, but he didn't do us any. He didn't do us any favors over here either.
Yeah, but that was one of the things, from everything that I remember and everything that I read, our board controlled everything, and just like y'all's. And he came in and kindly said, y'all wanted me, I'm here, but I'm going to do it my way. And they actually had enough sense to let him do things his way. So maybe they learned a lesson, and whenever he retires, maybe they don't fall back into old habits.
Yeah.
That day's coming.
Yeah, but that's how it should be,
The fact that you're hiring a guy, but then you want to control everything that he does? No. You hired him, let him do his job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it's the same thing with the Disney movies or with Star Wars movies. They hire these great directors who can do the job, and then, all the big wigs at Disney are like, no, we want to do this. I'm like, no, it's not how it works. Like,
they're wanting to make things political is what they're
trying to do.
And it's killing, in my opinion, the political part of it has just about killed Star Wars.
I will say this. The political stuff is happening in a lot of movies now. Mm-hmm. There's one movie franchise where it really hasn't been very prevalent. So a lot of people complain that, movies are too political. But there's one movie franchise that has kind of kept away from that. It's the Fast and the Furious franchise. As crazy as the story keeps getting with these movies, it's about family and driving cars and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Right.
And that's what I love about it. I love to turn my brain off and watch those movies.
Same. I mean, it's hard for me to watch professional sports these days because everything's so dead again political. Get the politics out of my sports.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Do it after. That's my thing is like, I try to keep politics out of, my stuff when I perform. Like I might talk about a topic here or there, but I'm not going to be here, I'm not going to get behind, especially something national wide stuff. And I don't have all the information. That's not my place.
Right. We're entertainers. We're trying to entertain the masses.
I just want to put smiles on faces. Right. That's all I want to do.
Well, this is as good a segue as we can. My friend Lee Cross here happens to be a stand-up comedian. How in the world did you get into stand-up?
So it's probably going to blow your mind, but I actually grew up, not only did I play sports and all that, I actually grew up doing musical theater in my local community here. So
that does not shock me.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you did theater. I love doing theater. I love being on stage. I didn't like the dancing part, and I'm not a very good dancer, but I enjoyed just being on stage. And I did I did shows like The Music Man, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. I did Chicago. I think I did like over 30 different shows over my my community musical theater career, and I absolutely loved it. I loved hearing the audience clap and cheer, and then after the show we'd get in line and they'd shake our hands and people would be like, "Oh, I loved it when you did this," or and it was getting kind of older. I was in college, and I'd always watch stand-up comedy. I think one of the first stand-up comedy specials I ever saw was Robin Williams live on Broadway. I woke up in the middle of the night and watched it without my parents' permission on HBO.
Same way I was on the Carlin ones.
Yeah. And so that was the first one I ever watched. And I was like, man, that'd be kind of fun to do that. That was probably when I was in junior high. And then, of course, listening to Jeff Foxworthy and the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. And it just so happened that one of the bars here in town had an open mic night for comedy. And I was like, well, I want to try this out. So I went out and tried it, and I didn't do that great, but I got some laughs. And I was just like, I was like, well, I'll keep trying it. I'll keep trying it. And I kept going. I kept doing it. And then, some more people started showing up. So we had at one time when I was here in college, we had about 20 different guys doing the open mic with us. So we were putting on some pretty big shows to the point where we actually had Pauly Shore come through. He was doing a college tour throughout the United States, and he stopped at our little venue and did a show. So I got to meet him. That was an experience.
Please tell me most of what you see on comedy and on movie with him is character.
It's like he doesn't turn it off. He is the same way.
He is what he is.
He's a very eccentric, very fun guy to talk to. But it's not an act or anything like that. So
how many times did he say, buddy?
All the time. All the time. It was like, and of course, the more he drank, the more it came out.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I started doing that, and I never thought of like doing it as a career or anything like that. It was a fun hobby to have. And then for several years, I stopped doing it just because, life got in the way and whatnot. And then what got me back into it, I was working in the oil field, and we were out in Midland, Odessa, and our job got done early. So we packed our stuff up. My boss was like, hey, you guys want to go out to the bar and get something to drink and just hang out before we head out tomorrow morning? And we were like, yeah, no problem. And I noticed that they were having an open mic there. It was a music open night. And so for some reason, I was just like, man, I miss doing stand-up. So I went and talked to the person in charge. I was like, hey, is it cool if I do like 5 minutes of stand-up comedy? And she was like, yeah, no, that's totally fine. And so brought me up there. I was just going to do 5 minutes of my old material. I haven't performed in like 3 years. The whole crowd was rolling. I ended up doing about 15 minutes just because like I was just like, well, it's my time. Like, it was like, no, keep going. I was just like, oh, okay. I haven't done this in like 4 or 5 years. And so
you were out of material, what you bud?
Right. Yeah. I was just like, I couldn't remember all my material. So I was just kind of just, working, doing crowd work and all that. But after that, I just felt, all the good feelings inside. I was like, oh man, why did I ever quit this? And it just so happened, like a couple of weeks later, the boss man came up to us and was like, hey, they're going to shut down our yard. So you can either go to Pleasanton, Texas, which is down in South Texas. You can go to Midland, Odessa, or you don't have a job. And so I went and got a job with the city of College Station, and I just started doing the open mics here. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. Started doing the open mics here. Then I started going to Houston doing open mics and started networking, and man, everything was going great. So I was just like, all right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to save some money up. I'm going to keep working on my comedy, and then once I got a certain amount of money saved up, I'm gonna quit my job. And I'm gonna move to LA. And I even landed a college tour on the East Coast. So I was like, awesome. So I'll do that, quit my job, go do the college tour on the East Coast. And then when I get done, we're going to move to LA. And then I'm going to become a famous comedian, Netflix specials, and I'm going to be in the Avenger movie later on, And then COVID happened and just put the brakes on everything. So I did Zoom entertaining. I did Zoom comedy shows, which is the worst thing I've ever done, because you would have an audience, but then
you've got the delay too.
You got the delay. You've got people. They will either mute their microphones, so I can't hear them laugh, or they would turn their video off, so I couldn't even see the reactions. So there was most of the times where I would do a joke and I'd do the punchline, and I could see a couple of people like laughing, but because I couldn't hear that. And the one thing about stand-up comedy is you feed off the audience. That's why you do it. Even with a Netflix special, when you see those guys on stage, they're doing it in front of an audience because your energy builds off the energy. So if you feel the energy kind of going down, you need to amp it up a little bit and whatnot. So, but I did it, and I put my Venmo up there and everything, and people, hey, if you want a tip, anything like that, let me know. Here, I really appreciate it. And I wasn't getting a lot of money. I was doing a lot of free shows, but for me, it was just being in front of an audience, just keeping the creative juices flowing was the big thing for me. And then I started doing some stuff on TikTok, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I love TikTok. It's a great way to kill a couple of hours on the weekend. But like constantly having to come with creative ideas and stuff it was mentally draining on it. Like I applaud the content creators on like social media apps because man, it is a lot of work, and you think you've got a great idea and you don't get the results you want, or you do something and for some reason like you have over I have one video that has almost over 500,000 views, and it just blew my mind because I didn't think that was the funniest or the greatest, but just a lot of people shared it and viewed it, so it was mind blowing. But I just did that because there was nothing open, so I couldn't perform. So my thing was just do this to keep the creative juices flowing, and I was writing jokes every day. And now that Texas is back open, I'm doing a minimum of 2 open mics a week, and then driving down to Austin and Houston to do shows as well and networking. So, I still have a regular job to pay my bills, but eventually the goal is to be like just to be a stand-up comedian and tour and do all that.
Well, pre-COVID, how was the comedy scene in
It was
Texas?
on fire. It was on fire. A lot of people don't realize this, but Houston actually has a bigger comedy scene than Austin or Dallas. And San Antonio's actually got a pretty decent one too. But Houston was the place, that's where, a lot of the big name comedians would come to go to the Houston Improv or the Secret Group in Houston. And like, that's where you wanted to be because that's where you had the most comedians, working comedians and hobbyist comedians. Like there's guys I can say, like, I'd like to say I'm a professional comedian, but I don't do it full time. I'm still what you would consider like a hobbyist. I just do it. I do it because it's not my main income. Right. And then you got guys, all they do is comedy is how they pay the bills. That's what I want to be one day. And so, but comedy is really big in Texas. And then obviously Joe Rogan makes the announcement that he's moving to Austin. So everyone's moving to Austin now to do that, which is a great thing because, Austin's it's a weird town. And but there's a lot of live entertainment, like music wise. It's almost as big as Nashville. And
Austin City Limits was huge there for the longest.
Oh yeah.
And it was just as big as the Grand Ole Opry Live for the longest.
Yeah. I remember watching Stevie Ray Vaughan on there for the first time. It's fantastic. Yes. Or we see every now and then they'll play like old like Willie Nelson's Austin City Limits.
Mm-hmm. And
you just stop what you're doing and you watch it because I was just like, this isn't any better than this. So, but yeah, it's steadily growing. Obviously, because of COVID, it's kind of slow. But another big hub that's grown that a lot of people don't really know, like Nashville, they've got a really good comedy scene. Atlanta, Georgia has got a really good comedy scene. LA is going to be non-existent because it's closed down and it probably is not going to open for another year.
From everything that I've heard, the Comedy Store out there is just basically abandoned. It hadn't been opened up in 2 years, or at least, excuse me, not 2 years, but at least a year.
It feels like 2 years.
Yeah, it feels like 10.
I've got family who lives out in LA that work in the movie industry and the TV industry, and it's basically locked down. There's no going outside unless you need to go. But like the entertainment business is completely shut down. Like they're doing some stuff, but the amount of stuff that you've got to go through just to go be on your TV show or whatnot, it's to me, it doesn't seem worth it to go out there right now.
I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't go out there right now. I
Yeah.
mean, you
That was, I mean, even before.
look at how many Californians are moving to you.
Oh, yeah. And so here's the
I
thing.
just hope they leave their politics back there.
They're not. Like, I don't know if you saw, but there was a socialist march in Austin. There were people walking down Congress Avenue in Austin, Texas, with Russian flags and pictures of the guy who created social Marx or whatever. They were marching in Austin, Texas, to support communism. Now, Terry, I'm going to tell you this right now. I have had the pleasure to meet people who have lived in communist countries and have moved to America because they wanted the American dream. And this one guy from Venezuela, and he's old. He's probably around my dad's age, in his 60s. And he's like, I could tell you stories just like he's like, when they said like we were in line to get bread, he's like, that stretched for miles and almost miles just to get food from the government because we had no money. He was like, these people don't understand like how terrible of an idea it is. So it just blows my mind that like someone sent me a video of it, and I was like, where is this taking place? And then I noticed all the buildings in downtown, and I was like, oh, that's freaking Austin, Texas.
I have no words. I never thought I'd ever hear anybody tell me that a group of people marched through Austin, Texas after everything that I've heard about Texas. Had the nerve to walk down the streets with some communist flags, and
yeah,
y'all got some work to do, brother.
Like I said, Texas has its own, mini cultures, like, Houston, Austin. I mean, they wholeheartedly love the keep Austin weird thing. And I like that because Austin's a great city. It has a lot to offer culturally, entertainment wise. There's tech companies that are moving there. It's a great city. But at the same time, it's like little California is what it is. It's like, well, basically, it's like little LA, because I've been to parts of California that aren't even like that.
Right.
So everyone, in the crazy thing, so I hadn't been to Austin in maybe a year or two. And I was driving in to go do an open mic down there. And the amount of homeless people there is staggering. Every underpass was just a homeless encampment.
Yeah.
And it's, and I understand, people fall on hard times and all that. But I was watching a video where somebody actually went to go interview the homeless people to see like what was going on around there. Were they having any issues with that? Because the city provides them like porta potties and stuff, and they keep the city of Austin is trying their best to keep it under control and at least livable for them as well. And like a lot of people, this one guy, he was an actual homeless. He's been homeless for years. He has, a couple of mental issues that keep him from being a normal member of society. And it's sad, but he was like, a lot of the people in these homeless encampments are young people who just want to live that lifestyle, which blew me away. Because Terry, I don't know about you, I kind of like living with a roof over my head. Kind of nice. I'll go camping every now and then, but I don't want to do it full time.
Me either. I don't mind camping every once in a while. It's been a little while since I've done it. My back does not really appreciate sleeping on the ground.
Nope.
I've gotten really used to that real nice big fluffy mattress that I sleep on every night.
The one that I paid a lot of money for and worth every penny. Absolutely.
Yes. Mine was worth every dime that I dropped on it. And I treat it like my baby, because that's what it is.
I treat it like a significant other.
Yeah. I mean,
please don't leave me.
Right. I'm in love with my bed.
Yeah.
And why would anybody want to do that willingly?
Well, the thing too is,
I'm not trying to knock anybody. No. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from and understand the mindset.
From what I've seen, because having gone to Austin many times to go do stand up, the mindset of the younger generation down there is like, first of all, when it comes to comedy, the one thing about comedy is like, you're gonna ruffle someone's feathers with your jokes. It happens. I don't see myself as a very controversial comedian, But I've said some stuff down there has made, people in Austin gasp.
Really?
Yeah, and it's it's like I said, it's a very liberal town. Obviously I'm not down there like 2020 or whatever. I know my place,
Right.
so I can read the audience. But a lot of guys they're lazy with their comedy writing. Like a lot of their jokes are just stuff that's on Twitter. Like, dude, I'm not on Twitter that often, but I know that was a post by somebody else, and you're just retelling the joke. It's just laziness, and they think that that's going to be the way to you know. I don't even know if these guys want to do comedy as like let's be. They don't. I don't know if they want to just be a stand-up comedian just to say that they're a stand-up comedian, or if they actually want to like pursue that as a career. You know, like my thing. So here in Bryan, like the group of comedians that we have here, it's like a brotherhood. It's like a football team, basically. It's a brotherhood. We're going to give each other shit, but at the same time, we care deeply about each other. We want everyone to be successful. But if one of your jokes you tell isn't funny, we're going to remind you that you told that joke that wasn't funny.
Don't use that next time.
Yeah.
Save that one for later.
Exactly. Yeah. So we go down to Austin, and we have, and everyone's too nice to everybody. They don't want to step on any toes or anything.
Yeah.
And my thing was just like, if a friend of mine asked me like, hey, what you think about that joke? I want to tell them like, hey, either it was a great joke or I didn't think it was that good. Maybe try doing this or, and maybe go back, take that back to the drawing board. I'm not going to sit here and just build you up and like, make you not be successful.
Right.
And it's the younger generation. I say that I'm 34 years old, sound like an old man. It's just, the younger generation, especially at my job. At my job, we have kids that are fresh out of college coming to work,
mm-hmm.
and they don't want to do the work.
Right.
Like they just want they want to say that they have a job, and then where it's like, all right, let's get, because my thing is we get our job done, quick enough, we can go home. I don't want to stay here, and get overtime because the job, we could have finished it, a couple hours ago. And for them, they're just like, taking their time. I understand like taking your time so you don't like make a mistake. You don't want to rush yourself. But they're just like, there's no sense of urgency to do anything, And I was just like, it bothers me because like I remember I've had bouts of laziness when I was younger, but at the same time, I was like, I had schoolwork to do or I had a job to go to. I had bills that had to be paid, so I've got that, fire under my ass to get shit done.
Right.
And I think there's no fire burning under their ass to get anything done.
As bad as I hate to say this, I'm turning 40 this year, and my generation, for better or worse, has taught it.
Yep.
Let's call it like it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. If somebody asks me my opinion, I'm going to give it.
Yeah.
And I try to be tactful sometimes, but sometimes you just got to call a spade a spade.
Yeah. And I've run into that at work with these younger kids. Our boss will be asking us like, hey, how could we have done this better? And they'll sit there and they'll be like, nope, that was the best way we can do it. And I'll be like, actually, if you wouldn't have been on your phone on TikTok all day, we could have gotten this done a lot faster.
Right.
And I try to tell them, I was like, look, I'm a little older, I'm a little wiser than you. I know, hard to believe, but I've got a lot of life experience. And I'm going to let you know right now, you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't have a sense of urgency, you don't have proper communication. And the tools we have now to communicate, oh my gosh.
Yeah. If we would have had the same tools 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Who knows where I'd be.
Right.
That's why someone's like, we have the tools, we're not using them. A lot of people bash the participation trophy thing. And here's my thing. Like growing up, I got a participation trophy for being on the Little League team. But I remember my dad having that conversation. He was like, man, wouldn't it have been cool if you got the bigger trophy? And I'm like, yeah, like I definitely want the bigger trophy. And he's like, well, hey, next year, we gotta work harder for it. I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, my dad, gave me those, he didn't want me to settle for, just being, ordinary. He made sure that I was just like, I'm going to make sure that I set you up for success. And another thing too that I definitely give my dad props for is my dad wasn't my friend growing up. My dad was my dad. He was my he was an instructor. He was the leader of the family. You know, and when people like when I hear people say, yeah, me and my dad are best friends, I was like, that is just so foreign to me because his job was to make sure that I didn't end up in jail, dead, and was successful to go in, out into the world.
My dad started out as my dad, but as I grew up, he became my best friend.
Yeah.
The way I hated it, absolutely hated it, when my dad came to my baseball games. I loved it, but I hated it.
Yeah.
Because I put so much pressure on myself because I knew if I done something bad, I was going to hear about it. I was going to be told I sucked.
Yep.
You know, and I'm a very competitive person by nature, especially now. And I attribute a lot of that to him because he pushed me and he kept pushing me. And if I did 3 things right, he would constantly remind me of that one thing that I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it pushed me to make him to the point where he didn't criticize. And he did that all the way through my sport.
Oh yeah.
You know, but
you'd have the game of your life, but you did that one thing wrong.
Right.
No, and he wasn't doing it to be like, hey, Terry, you suck at life. He was just like, hey, just heads up.
Quite the opposite. He was preparing me for life.
Exactly. It's like, hey, good job on all of this, but it's like at work. You can do everything right, but if you screw up this one thing,
you'll never hear the end of it.
The boss don't care, the client don't care because you screwed up that one thing, you know? And it was, like I said, it wasn't because my dad wanted to make me feel bad or anything like that. He was just like, hey, I don't want you to get a big head thinking that you're all that.
Right.
You know, it was with not just sports, it was, even in theater. He was like, hey man, you're not on Broadway or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got stuff you can work on. Because when I did speech and debate, stuff in school, or shoot, when I was mowing the grass, he'd go out there and he's like, missed that. And I was just like, and he's like, no, you need to go out and do it.
Mm-hmm.
The job's not done until you finish that.
He was doing the best that he could to get you prepared for life.
Exactly.
He was being a man.
He was being a man. He was being a dad. He wasn't being a friend. Now that I'm older, now that I'm 34 years old, we can have that relationship.
Right.
To where I can call him up and ask him for advice. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's longer in the tooth than I am. He's got way more experiences, and I can go to him for advice, or I can go to him and just talk, shoot the shit or anything like that. I love that I have that relationship now. If I would have had that back then, I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I know now.
Right.
And it's gonna skip a generation. I hope it skips a generation. And so these kids realize, like, oh dang, my parents didn't set me up for success. I don't want to do that to my child. And I hope that this is just a temporary thing that we go through. I'm not a parent and I'm nowhere close to being a parent right now. So I can't say too much on the topic, but I've got friends who have children and I see them, they're like, I can't wait to be best friends with their kid. And I was just like, you're not going to do them a good service.
You're going to do them a disservice.
You gotta raise them. You got to make them a member of society that gives, that does good for it. Because if you don't, you get these kids that are like, me. I don't want to help you. It's just bad.
Yeah.
But
even later on in life, my dad wore a lot of hats with me. My mom does too. At the first and foremost, they are my dad's, he passed away in 2012, but, even still, they were my best friends. But first and foremost, they were my parents. You know what I'm saying? They put the best friend stuff to the side and were parents first and foremost.
Yeah.
And each one of them at different times, as you get older, and they know that you can understand a whole lot more now than what you could then. It seems like they apologize for this, that, and the other and try to explain themselves from what they did and how they did it. And I've told both of them, I said, this is possibly the best compliment that I could give you But if I'm ever lucky enough to have any kids of my own, I want to raise them exactly the way I was raised.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartly mean that. I don't have any either. But if the good Lord's willing, one of these days, and I am, I'm going to do the best I can to emulate what my mom and dad did.
Yeah.
Because I think I turned out okay.
I mean,
could
I have done a better job? Absolutely. But I think I'm doing all right for where I'm at right now. And I've, like you said, I've had those conversations with my parents too, where, they kind of like, did I do a good job? And I was like, hey, I don't have anything on my record. I've not been arrested. I've got a great job. I've got a good work ethic. I'm doing what I love. What you guys taught me growing up, I still, do to this day. I was like, you guys don't ever feel bad or anything about the way you raised me. Like, I deserved every whooping I got, every whooping. And there's some whoopings that I should have got that I didn't because I didn't get caught.
Did you ever get community whoopings?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, okay. I was just checking to see if I was alone in the world. I'm glad I'm not.
Oh, yeah. It takes a village, trust me.
Oh, yes. And I didn't understand it then, but I appreciate it now.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you're young, you don't get it. Yeah. But now looking back on, you're like I said, dude, I am so thankful I got every whooping I got because there was never a whooping I did not deserve.
Right.
Never was it. There was nothing that was called for it.
And when done properly, whenever the time comes to do something similar to what you got the whooping for, it makes you think twice about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Be like, wait a minute, I might get a whooping for this. And that hurt last time. I don't know, man. Whenever we get to talking about generations below us, it kind of makes me worry. But at the same time, the circle of life, look at the generations in front of us. They said the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, at the end of the day, it's, if we ever do become parents, whichever way, you're going to be responsible for that child.
Yep.
And you've got 18 years to prepare him or her. And then once they're an adult, you kind of like got to let them go and hope for the best. Because I know a lot of parents who they raised their kids, they did the best they could, and they turned out to be terrible people. And all they can say is, I tried. Something happened that was out of their control. I'm sure they wish they could, there's something they could do to help their kid, but it's kind of a roll of the dice. You just hope that you do the best of your abilities to raise that kid, and it's good too. Like with the communal stuff, I've got growing up, we had aunts and uncles, grandparents that helped raise us too. It takes a village.
Yeah.
So, and then there was our family. There was our, growing up at our school, I went to a small private school. So we had, those connections with those families as well. And, if there's a group of us kids acting a fool, even if that person wasn't my dad, he'd straighten us right because he knew, he's like, I know your dad, and I know he would not let you do that, So it's all about, it's not just, how you raise your kids, it's the atmosphere that you raise them and the people that you put around them. Because you can do your best that you can. If you're in a bad, toxic, relationship with a family member or something, that can definitely affect that kid. So you got to be aware. It's all about, you got to do what's best for that child to raise them.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And then,
one thing that got embedded in me, later on, I heard it one time and it just stuck with me. Whenever you have a child, your life is no longer lived for yourself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning everything that you do from that point forward is for that child.
Exactly.
And, to a degree, I don't think a lot of people heard that, and good, bad, or indifferent, I'm calling it like I see it. I don't think a lot of people look at having a child the same way that I do.
I think from what I've seen, in my years, is I've seen people who they have a kid, they get excited, they're like, oh, I get to be a dad, I can't wait to teach them stuff and all that. And then I see some people who, they have a kid, they weren't expecting it. And they're like, you know what, I'm gonna do my best and, and do whatever I can to help, and raise the kid. And then there's some people who are like, they have the kid and they go back to the way they were.
Exactly.
They don't. And then that's, they're like, oh, now I've got a little friend to go out with me to places.
Right.
And, and that's where it's not the best way to go. No. I'm not a parentologist or anything, but, I can just see it, be like, that kid's, you probably shouldn't do that. All I've done is I've raised a couple of dogs, so my experience only goes so far.
I've had a hand in helping to raise a few of my little cousins, but it's hypocritical for me, I guess you could say. I think that's the right word to even think about giving parenting advice, considering I'm not a parent. But at the same time, that's the way I would do it if I did have a child.
Yeah. Well, whenever I have friends who have kids, they ask me for advice, and because they're just looking for advice. And they ask me, and I'm safe this. I jokingly say, just hit them, because I don't know. I'm not a parent. I don't know how to parent that situation. And I get them to laugh because they're so wound up in the situation. I try to get them to not think about it for a second and like clear their head. That's why I say it. I do not advocate beating your child unless it's a butt whooping. When
all else fails, grab the paddle.
Exactly. But I do that because they're so in their head because, they want to do the right thing. And they're just like, oh, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I don't know why you're coming to me for advice because I have 0 children.
You look for any advice that you can get from capable people that you trust.
Oh, yeah. I mean, And I was like, and I tell them, I was like, look, I don't have any advice in the situation, but I think, maybe do this. That's the best I can do is give them advice from my perspective and just wish them the best. Because at the end of the day, it's their kid, so.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
So when's your next comedy?
So I've got some open mics here in Bryan, Texas, and then I'm going back. They're doing shows in Houston, and I'm gonna stay away from Austin for a little while until that calms
down. Next time you go to Austin, go find Alex Jones and see if you can get him an interview.
Right. Go down to his compound.
All right.
So, but yeah, just trying to get out there. A lot of my friends are starting to get bigger shows going out. It's real slow. I'm at like the bottom of that totem pole right now because, I've been doing it for so long. But I've got a lot of friends who are, they're starting to do some small tours. So hopefully I can get on with them because, and like I said, the one thing I like about Houston is, there's a lot of comedians there, so it's very competitive. So when I go down there, it's like, Lee, if you don't bring your A game, you're probably not going to get an offer to do a bigger show or anything like that.
Well, if and when you come up to Nashville, let a brother know. I'm going to come up there and see your show.
Trust me. Once I start doing when I start doing, tours and stuff like that, or anything like that, if I'm ever in anyone's neighborhood, I'm going to make sure that they know because I know a lot of people. I got friends all over the United States, that want to see me do comedy, and I'll post them. When I have a show that I record, I'll send it to them or whatnot. So, but if I'm ever in anyone's area, I guarantee I'm going to shoot them up in the DMs like, hey, I'm going to be in this area at this time. I'd love to see, come see you, and you come see me do a show. Because, there's Terry, I've never met you in real life before. So,
yes, you have.
Oh, you're right. We have. You're right.
Yes, you have. Dude, we met down in Panama City at one of the Chai by Southeast events.
Yeah, the Chai by South. Yeah.
It was either the first one or the second one. One of the two.
It was. I didn't go to the second one. I went to the first.
It was the first one then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot to drink. A lot of drink then. That was a party.
It was fun. I'll say that. Yeah. It was fun. The heaviest I drank any was on day one. I wanted to hurry up and get it over with. I kind of just went easy the rest of the week. So
yeah, I think a lot of us made that mistake.
Yeah, and then I got out there thinking in my 30s, thinking I was 18 to 21 again out there on that sand doing the tug of war.
I don't ever want to have a reminder like that ever again.
Oh.
I think I was going to wake up from a hangover. I was like, this is
Was
how I
it
go
that
out.
bad?
Oh my gosh, dude! It felt like I had little dwarves in my head just beating my temples in. There wasn't enough Pedialyte and Gatorade, man. I walked to the nearest gas station, looked like a zombie.
Yeah, I learned early. I did not like getting drunk, so I've been very, very sparing on that.
That's the last time I got like drunk.
Yeah.
Like
Most of the time, if I do sit down and have a drink or so, it's one, maybe two.
yeah.
I usually quit right there. Yeah, I just don't like being drunk. Never have.
Mm-mm. I think I've been drunk like maybe a total of 5 or 6 times, and every time I was just like, we don't need to do that again. I'll have a drink every now and then. Like if I go do a show, I don't drink when I go do a show. I'll have like maybe a beer after. But if I'm traveling, like if I'm going to Houston, when I get done with the show, I got to head back to College Station. So I was like, well, there's no point in me drinking.
Right.
So I never drink when I'm at a show. Even when I'm here in Bryan, I don't even do that.
Right.
Now, and I do most of my drinking at home on the porch.
It's where I am.
Right.
Brother, I appreciate you coming on the porch.
Dude, I appreciate you reaching out to me, man.
You got an open invitation. Anytime you want to come back, you're more than welcome.
Oh yeah. And definitely we'll have to do in the future, we'll definitely do a live one in person on the back porch.
Now that sounds like a good idea. I like that.
Definitely make that happen.
Where can the people follow you?
So you follow me on Facebook, just Lee Cross. Just tag me when you post it in the group. You can follow me on Instagram at Lee_Cross_comedy. That's pretty much. And then I'm on TikTok, but I don't really do much of that anymore. But just add me on Facebook. There's a good chance we got a bunch of mutual friends. So it's like I know everybody, man.
That you do. You're a pretty popular fella. And he's a good follow on social media. I highly recommend him. Lee Cross,
I'll make you laugh. Hey, man, I appreciate you, buddy.
That's all the time we have for this episode. Please like the page and join the group on Facebook at Porch Matters Podcast. Please subscribe or follow us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, or the platform of your choice so you don't miss an episode. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, please rate the show and leave us a review if you have the time. Thank you very much for listening, and catch us next time right here on Porch Matters.